Moymet, just to the north of Trim. The church here was re-erected by Sir Lucas Dillon, who was the Exchequer Baron for Queen Elizabeth I. He would have erected the house here on the occasion of his wedding with Lady Jane Bath. The east window here, I'm very glad to say, was repaired a few years ago with the assistance of the County Council, Dundee Fair, and a number of other groups coming together, just done before the passing of Sean. At Moymet, there is a tower house which consists of 4 stories with the remains of a stone house. The gatehouse was the admission to the tower house and was well protected. And to the west of these is the parish church of Moymet. The gatehouse is a rectangular structure with a vaulted passage, but much of the vault is damaged. A flat arched doorway in the west wall of the passage leads to the guard room. Externally, a doorway on the south wall leads to a newel stair that rises to the first floor, which has large windows in the north and a fireplace. The tower house has loops for shooting out of. The first floor had a large window in the east wall with a guardrobe chamber just to the north of it. A guardrobe was a toilet, and it sounds like our modern word wardrobe, and it was where people kept their clothes, and the ammonia and other gases given off killed the lice and insects in the clothes. The fortified house was 37 metres in length and 13 metres wide. 7 large windows can still be counted on the southern portion of the ruins. These large windows showed that the landowner thought it was safe to settle here. The tower house was erected when the area was subject to attack, and so smaller windows and built to a higher level. It survives today as the remainder of a barrel vaulted chamber. This large house was probably the one erected by Sir Lucas Dillon when he married Lady Jane Bath. On one of the walls, castle walls, there's a shield and a gig figure. A shield and a gig is a rude figure, usually showing a woman with her legs spread apart, and these shields are generally erected on the outside of churches. Why? No one knows. Perhaps the idea is to take note that you should forget these things when you go into the church, but you've just been reminded of it by a stone carving. The Sheila on Moymet Castle the features are difficult to make out on it, and it is difficult to interpret. A church at Moymet is listed in the early 1300s, but the church that survives today was probably rebuilt by Lucas Dillon. A report from 1622 said the church and chapel were repaired, but by 1680 the church was ruined. The church appears to have been built in 2 separate parts. The chancel is older and narrower than the nave. A stairs was added internally to the northeast angle of the nave, which provided access to the root loft where the priest lived. In the graveyard there is a stone to James Riley, who joined the Leinster Regiment of the British Army and served in France from 1914. He died at home as a result of the war in January 1918. He is commemorated here by a Commonwealth grave marker. He was aged just 26 when he died. There is a well. It's not a holy well, but it's an ancient well called Tubarura, which means the red well, next to the old railway line. Visiting the well with Sean Fay, I discovered there was a reddish tinge on the surface of the mud, possibly from the iron content of the water. Sean Fay, in the 1950s, discovered a penal cross when Smith's old house was being taken down and they were building a new hay barn on the site. This family of Smiths founded J&E Smith in Trem. Mick Hines was one of the leaders of the attack on the Trim police barracks by the IRA in 1920. He died in 1956, aged 74, at Tully Yard and was buried in Moymet Cemetery. Here at Moymet is buried Mick Hines, who was one of the leaders of the attack on Trim Barracks in 1920. I was so pleased to have his name added to the family gravestone here in the year 2020, and I would really like to thank Aidan Heffernan and say how much I appreciate his help in getting this done. It's important that these men were remembered.